Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Doug Flynn, and welcome to the Doug Flynn Show. We're here at the beautiful Lexscape Studios. As you can see how gorgeous it looks here in the back. And we're glad you're here, and today is going to be a fun show. I am excited about this because I got one of my dearest, oldest, and I say this very gingerly because we are the same age, even though I'm a few months older than him. Friend's going to be on our show today, and that's former baseball coach at the University of Kentucky for 25 years, and his reputation in the baseball world and in the town are just impeccable. People love him, and we're lucky to have him. Keith Madison is going to be with us today, and we're going to talk about a few different things. One is sharing our faith. It's pretty easy when you go into a church to be able to share your faith with somebody because you feel comfortable, or if you're in a setting at a revival, or there's all Christian people around, or if you're in a Bible study, it's so easy to sit there and to act spiritual and to share your faith. Well, how comfortable are we when we get out of those environments? And we're going to talk about that at the store, as a coach, as a player. If I work in a bank like I do, am I comfortable sharing my faith with other people? Well, we're going to bring Coach Madison on, and he's going to help us with some of this. And here's why. Because he's doing a lot of work with something called SCORE International. We'll get to that in a minute. But he's traveling all over the world into other countries sharing God's goodness. And he's doing it in a variety of ways, and we'll talk about it. So the things we want to ask him are this. I'm going to get him prepared. What would missionary work look like in our own homes, in our own communities, or within our own state? You don't have to be a missionary and go out of state. You can do home missions. We're going to talk about some of that. Do churches provide opportunities in local outreach programs? What does the Bible say about missionary work? And how important is prayer in missionary work? Well, when we return, we're going to start talking about this, as well as a little history about me and Coach Madison, because we go back to 1972. He even said that I came out of the locker room one night and tried to pick up his wife. I don't know if that's true or not, but we're going to delve into that. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Keith Madison on the Doug Flynn Show. The Sports History Foundation relives the stories behind the story, and these are truly remarkable stories.
I think we played in '82 with a chip on our shoulder, and I think it was from that game.
Hit swing, solid shot, left field, base hit.
We document and share those unforgettable moments of the past. If there's a powerful and compelling high school sports story, we want to tell it. Hey, welcome back to the Doug Flynn Show. My guest is going to be Coach Keith Madison. Let me just tell you a little bit about him. First of all, we met in 1972. We'll get into that. 25 years, head baseball coach at the University of Kentucky. That's amazing. And it's interesting because when he got out of pro ball and then got a job up here at Kentucky, we'll see, was he a little bit green or was he really ready to go? His on-field accomplishments earned him selection into several Hall of Fames, including University of Kentucky Hall of Fame, Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame. He retired in 2003. That just doesn't seem possible. And he's been working now with SCORE International, and we'll let him tell you a little bit about that. Lovely wife Sharon, Austin and Tyler, his two kids, known them since they were babies. And I am thrilled and humbled and honored to have not only my good friend, but my accountability partner, Coach Keith Madison, with me today. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, Doug. Thanks for having me on.
Good to see you. Now, we've been seeing each other quite a bit lately because you're doing radio with UK Baseball. I'm doing a little television. Our booths are right next to each other, and even though we can't hear each other, we can sure give enough signs where we know what's going on, right?
Yeah, and every once in a while, when you don't get the sign, when you miss a signal, I can hold up a piece of paper with something written on it.
You notice you had to write a little bit bigger now, don't you?
Yeah.
Tell us, we met because we both were in pro baseball in 1972. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was great. It was great to have another Kentuckian on the team. We were playing for the Tampa Tarpons, if you will remember. A guy that we both loved, Russ Nixon, was a tough manager, but a good manager, a fair man. So we enjoyed playing for him. And so you had just signed, if I remember, and you were maybe in a little camp to sort of get you ready to be
rookie league.
Yeah, to be assigned to a team. Yeah. And so this is something I'll never forget. That first night, Greg Sinatro had gone down with an injury, and so
number one draft choice, playing third base.
Yeah, and so Russ Nixon looks at you, Flynn, can you play third base? Yeah, I can play third. And so you play third that night, and Russ is constantly saying, Doug, move, back, move in. And he finally looks at the dugout and says, that guy's never played third base before. But I think that's one of the reasons he loved you, because you wanted to play. And you're not going to tell him, no, I can't play third base.
No, if they say, can you catch? I'm going to say, yeah, I caught in high school. Because
Yeah.
as you know, when you start going through the minor leagues, the higher you get up, the closer you're getting to the major league. So I said, sure, I can do that.
Yeah, and the more positions you can play, the more valuable you are, right?
That's exactly
right. Russ always gave us a hard time because we were Kentucky boys. He once told me, he said, hey, Madison, the most dangerous weapon in Kentucky? And I said, no. He said a pickup truck.
But he loved both of us, and we loved him too.
Yes, sir.
He was
Yes,
my
sir.
first manager, and that's how you and I met. We started in 1972, and then you got out of pro ball and came to the University of Kentucky in 1979.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Wow.
This actually summer '78. When I first got out of pro ball, I took a high school job in Central Florida, in Lake Wales, and I coached 2 years of high school baseball, which was great for me. And because I realized, I know a lot about pitching, but man, this other stuff. First of all, I couldn't hit, and so, I had to learn a lot. But one of the things I learned is that coaching is about connecting. You can't coach players if you can't connect with them, and so that was a valuable lesson I learned early on. And then I went to Mississippi State for a year, worked under a great coach, Ron Polk. And then he's the one that told me, he said, hey, the Kentucky job's open. You ought to send your resume in. And I said, I'm 26 years old. They're not going to hire me. He said, send your resume in. I'll make a phone call for you. So it all worked out. I won't go into all the details, but it worked out. And Cliff Hagan hired me in the summer of 1978. And Sharon found out the same day that I got the job that Sharon was pregnant. And so I almost had a heart attack because two major things happened in one day. But, we moved to Lexington, and I had a cousin here and you. And those were the only two people in Lexington I knew. So I leaned on you guys heavily.
Well, I wish we could have done a lot more. It's kind of goofy time back then too. But
Yeah.
I'd been moving around. I'd been traded in. So your friendship though was vital then. And then it just has grown over all these years to where we see each other, talk to each other an awful lot. So you tell us just a little bit about your 25 years here. Some of the kids that you've had, and you're still on the top list. I mean, you had so many wins and just quality people that continue to come back and you stay in touch with.
Yeah, it's one of the great things about coaching. If you're a transitional coach and you really love your players, even though they may not love you at the time, they're going to come back and you're going to have those lifelong relationships, and that's one of the special things about coaching. But yeah, I mean, I had to learn on the job because I was so young. You think you know baseball, but we don't really coach baseball. We coach baseball players. So you have to really know how, like I mentioned, connect with the players.
18 to 21-year-old players.
And they don't always want to have a relationship with coach. But it's an opportunity, and I loved it. And I coached some great kids. I learned a lot from those kids. I think of Jeff Keener, he was the first player that I ever coached that made it to the big leagues. And I remember being so excited when he got called up.
One of your boys.
Yeah, one of my boys, and he got called up with the Cardinals. And then the next guy, I think, was Jeff Parrott.
Wow.
And after that, it was Paul Kilgus. And then on and on, eventually 17 or 18 of those guys got called up. And
even Jim Larritz comes back and talks to
yeah,
you.
Jim Larritz played for the Yankees, made a big name for himself.
Hit a couple of big home runs.
Yeah, clutch hitter. And then Brandon Webb, from Ashland, Kentucky. Brandon played for me and was a Cy Young Award winner.
You let me be like what was that called? I got to sit on a bench some that year.
Yeah, you were like a volunteer coach.
Yeah.
And
Brandon Webb was there.
And you could come out and work with the infielders a little bit and help them a lot.
You just told me don't pick up a bat.
But no, you are the best at teaching infield play, and especially how to turn a double play. I mean, there's nobody better.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So back in those days, I mean, we weren't hooking up at churches or anything. Where did you stand in your faith, and when did it really start to grow and you started to blossom?
Doug, this is embarrassing for me to tell you. I became a Christian when I was 12 years old, and when I started playing minor league baseball and going to college and things like that, I really drifted away from my faith, and I became a follower instead of a leader. When I was a country boy, and all of a sudden I'm playing professional baseball with guys from L.A. and New York and Puerto Rico, all over the place. And I didn't want to be known as the country boy. I wanted to be one of the cool kids. And so I followed the wrong guys many times. But every night when I would go to bed, there was something deep inside that was telling me, you need to straighten up. You need to start walking with me. And so I obviously knew that was God. And here's the sad part about that is I would pray every night and ask God to forgive me. And finally I said, he's tired of hearing from me. He doesn't want to hear this anymore because I keep going back and making the same mistakes. That is the worst mistake a believer can make.
Amen.
Because God never walks away from us.
Yeah.
It's us walking away from him. So it took me getting married and then when Sharon having our first child, it took that for me to get really serious about my faith. Before that, Doug, even in my coaching at the beginning, if I was around Christian coaches, I could talk that lingo.
Guilty.
Yeah. If I was around worldly coaches, I could talk their lingo, and I could be one of them. But that's not what God wanted me to be. Yeah. And so I tell you, our mutual friend Max Apple helped me a lot.
He's helped a lot of us.
Yeah, when he started, we got together, and he started inviting me to do FCA stuff with him. He and PJ Throckmorton and Steele Harmon. And so they would ask me to speak to these high school groups. I'm thinking, I'm not qualified. I'm not equipped. I'm not worthy. And PJ Throckmorton told me one time, he said, God doesn't want your ability, he wants your availability. And that really hit home to me. Yeah. And so I started doing that stuff. And once I started doing that, now I've become more accountable. Yeah. And so I really started growing as I'm ministering to other people. I didn't start ministering to other people after I got perfect, because that's never going to happen. That is never going to happen. So I just started growing bit by bit. And then it was so neat when you would come back from, when you were playing with the Mets or the Tigers or whoever you're playing with, and we started hooking up with Max. We started going on the road trips, and then once you got out of pro ball, you had more time to do that. Yeah. And we started traveling to Owensboro, Paducah.
Wherever they had a prison.
Yeah, Somerset. I mean, we were everywhere. And those were some of the greatest times of fellowship that I can ever remember, being in a van with you and Max, and sometimes Jim Andrews, the former center for Kentucky, and other people too. That's and then I just started growing from there, and all of a sudden my faith became very, very important to me, to the point, since I love my players, I wanted them to have that. Yeah. And so we would have chapel for the team, and you spoke several times at our chapels, and Brett Butler and some of your other friends that you'd bring into town. But once you take that step, and you're out there, and you're going to schools and you're speaking to kids, now you feel like, I don't want to be a hypocrite.
Exactly.
I want to walk the talk. I don't want to just talk the talk. And obviously, I still make mistakes, but I try to be a better example than I was once before.
Well, the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron. I don't know if we realized what we were doing. Excuse me. In those times, we were meeting and we were fellowshipping, but we were making each other stronger.
Exactly.
And that's why I tell folks, if you don't have an accountability partner, get one. If you're not going to church, go, because that's where you start growing and maturing in your faith.
Yeah.
So when you got out of coaching after 25 years and that's hard to walk away from.
It really is.
Did you have any idea that you were going to be in full-time ministry after that?
No, I didn't. As a matter of fact, I'll tell this story. We had that great year in 2000 with Brandon Webb and another big leaguer, Joe Blanton.
Joe Blanton, yeah.
Andy Green was on that team.
Wow.
John Wilson.
How'd you lose?
I know. We won. We had a good team, but
hit a bunch of home runs that year too, didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
John did.
For some reason, the NCAA didn't give us an invitation. So, but after that, things really started going south. I mean, we had 2 or 3 tough years, but I'm a competitor. You and I both. We're competitors, and I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to quit. I was going to keep battling, and then we're going to have another year, a good year, and get this thing going in the right direction. Well, I'm in the dugout in the spring of 2003, and it's about mid-season, and things aren't going very well. But we're playing a midweek game in between conference games. It was against Kent State University. And we're playing pretty well. We're making the plays. We're getting some timely hits. Our pitchers are throwing strikes. And I thought, hey, this is it. We're turning it around right now. And as soon as I had that thought, God spoke to my heart, and this is what he said. This is your last year coaching at the University of Kentucky.
Wow.
I mean, it was powerful. It was like it's the middle of a ball game, and I feel like God's talking to me, and it's really important. So I went home that night, and I told Sharon, I said, I really felt like God spoke to me today. And she said, let's talk about it tomorrow. So the next morning, I get up, and I thought she'd say, hey, just pray about it. And, after the season's over, then you can make a decision whether you're going to get out or not. And instead, when we talked about it, she said, this is what I've been waiting for.
Wow.
She affirmed it. She said, this is what I think you should do. My brother was up from Chattanooga. He came over to have a cup of coffee with me, and we're going to play Arkansas again that afternoon. He's up on the weekend, and I told him about it. And he followed us around all over the South, watching us play. And I thought, he's going to talk me out of it. I wanted somebody to talk me out of quitting. And instead he said, man, that is great. He said, you and Sharon are going to be able to do things you've never been able to do before. Well, I didn't know they were prophets. I didn't know what they were predicting. So the next day I met with John Kropp, former assistant athletic director, and told him, and he said, you're doing the right thing by talking to me now instead of waiting until after the season. And then Monday, I talked to Mitch Barnhart, who was in his first year as athletic director. And he was shocked, and we had a great talk, and he actually prayed with me as I made this decision. And then I met with the team, met with my coaching staff, and I finished the season out, and that was it. So, last game of the year, or last home game, Dr. Todd was there, and they gave me a little like a plaque or something. And so when the dust settled, he said, hey, you're only 51 years old. What are you going to do now? And I said, Dr. Todd, I have no idea. He said, well, if you need something to do, I've got a job for you. He said, you're welcome to work at the university as long as you want to. And I said, that is really kind.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So just for about a year, I worked in the development office with Terry Mobley and Mike Ritchie, great group of guys. And I learned a lot from them, and both Christian men, and both helped me. But they knew, and I knew that's not what God had intended for me. So, meanwhile, the last few years of my coaching, I had a friend in Tampa by the name of Skip Barker who was always asking me, hey, any old catching gear, old gloves or anything like that, send it to me, because we go to the Dominican Republic and we give it to the kids when we do mission work down there, and they love it.
They refurbish them, right? You give them old gloves and they'd restring them. And put them,
yeah. So we'd send them down there. And so as soon as he heard about me stepping down, he called me and said, hey, you have no excuse now. You're going with us. And so I committed to go on my first mission trip. It was a short-term mission trip in November of 2003 after I stepped down from coaching. And about 2 weeks before we were going, I told Sharon, I said, I don't think I want to go to the Dominican Republic. And she said, well, why not? And I said, I don't know. I'm going to get some disease, or I'm going to get bitten by some bug I've never heard of, and I may not never make it home. She said, no, you're going.
You're so country.
I know. She said, you're going. You made this commitment. You can't back out now. So she held my feet to the fire. And Doug, I go down there, and we're putting on clinics for these kids, and we're giving equipment away and stuff like that. And it was clear as a bell, God saying, this is what I want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is what.
Wow.
And so we could share the gospel with the kids after we put on these free baseball clinics. And it was beautiful.
So
and
you get a little bit of baseball, and you get a little bit
it
God knows our hearts, doesn't he?
He does.
Yeah.
And so it worked out perfect. And so, since then I've been on, well, let me back up and say that, I soon after that, I told Terry Mobley and Mike Ritchie that I was going to go to work for either FCA or Score International. I said, I've got to do this work in the Dominican Republic. So they understood and supported me. And so, a year after that, I'm going back, and I've been back 32, 33 times or something like that. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, so are you getting, when you were in college, and all these young kids now, I mean, you're going over and you're witnessing to these young Dominican kids who love baseball, which we all know. But the kids that you're having now, I mean, there's places for them at school, like FCA and Score,
Yes.
and other ministries where they can get involved in it.
No doubt. Yeah. We've taken, I don't know, several hundred people from the Lexington area on trips with us. An example, Austin Kearns and his oldest son, Aubrey, when Aubrey was about, I want to say 13 years old, he and his dad, Austin, went down there with us, had a great experience, and now Aubrey's getting ready to play for Morehead State University. Wow. So it's fun to see these kids grow. And we've taken college teams down there. The University of Louisville's been a couple of times, and North Carolina's been, different schools, and they put on clinics for the kids and do humanitarian work. But they know right up front that Score International is all about sharing the gospel. Mm-hmm. So we use baseball and other things as well as a tool to share the gospel with the kids.
Well, you also send out a daily devotional, and you've been doing it, I don't know how many years. About how many, I know I'll talk to people that say, did you get Keith's devotional today? How many people do you have on that list?
Well, that's an interesting story, too. I call it mound visits.
Yeah.
And so I try to keep them real short because I know people are busy.
How were your mound visits? Were they short, or were they?
They were intense sometimes. More intense than ones I send out.
Okay.
But I send these out, and it started off, I was just going to send them to a few of my former assistant coaches, and they would call me up and say, hey, can you put this guy on, or can you put this guy on? And then I thought, hey, I'm going to send them to my friends like Doug and Max, and so I had about 20. And now it's up to 573.
Wow.
And I sit there for an hour every morning and send these text messages out. I did find an app for that, which helps, but it still takes about an hour, and I love it. I mean, it keeps me in touch with friends and people I've met in the Dominican Republic, or players that I met when I speak at a chapel somewhere. So it's a neat thing that God has allowed me to do.
All right, I'm going to tell you what I think. Now you tell me what you think. As you get older, what do you think your legacy will be?
Ooh. I think our legacy is what we pour into people, not what we receive. I think my legacy will be someone, I hope and pray this is what it is, someone that as a coach loved his players, loved the game, loved his friends, and loved Jesus.
You've surpassed every one of those.
No, I want to.
And love Randy Macho Man Savage.
Yeah, that's another thing. You and I were teammates with Randy the Macho Man Savage. He was a baseball player.
He was a good baseball player.
Yes, he was.
People find that hard to believe, but he was one of our dear friends.
Yeah, and boy, when you were what were you, 20 years old then, or 19, 20, 21,
yeah,
something like that. You used to challenge that big dude.
I wasn't very smart.
But he loved you, you know.
Yeah, well, he knew I was having fun with him, you know. We'd say two things. We knew his dad was a wrestler, so we'd say things to him.
Well, part of baseball is ribbing each other.
Yeah,
you know.
said, that's fake. You know, you can't believe it's not. Oh, it's not fake. And of course, he was about 180 pounds in,
Yeah.
and he went to about 240.
And he was kind of quiet. I mean,
very quiet.
Yeah,
very quiet.
And then I saw him on television as a wrestler. I'm going, whoa, what happened to Randy?
Well, you know, I don't know of anybody that I know in this town that's got more respect given to them than you. Your reputation as a Christian man, as a godly man, as a coach, as a friend, and all those things. Watching you and talking to coaches that are still coming in to play baseball here in Lexington and seeing you down there talking to them, and the first thing that they'll say when we go down to interview them is Coach Madison here. We want to say hello to Coach Madison. The impact you've had on so many people's lives, mine especially. As an accountability partner, I know I can call you, and people say, what is accountability? Well, it's real simple. It's that you know somebody, but you love them anyway.
Yeah.
And with all of our faults and the things we've been through, we have a friendship that is pretty dadgum strong. And I can't thank you enough for coming and just sharing some of this with our folks out here.
Yeah, and I you know, I wrote down this little quote. I just happened to see it today. And it says, nothing in life is of any value unless you share it with others. I mean, isn't that true?
Yeah.
You know, you can have all the gifts and abilities in the world, but if you don't share it, it doesn't really help anybody, and it's not of any value. And you've done that, Doug, and boy, you've been a friend of mine, and when I felt like nobody else was supporting me, I knew you would. And you know, like you said, so good. You know, I know you love me even though I don't deserve it, and that's the way Jesus is. So,
and we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep sharing Jesus too.
Yeah.
Because as Pastor Steve tells us, we're right in our prime for sharing.
You know, I heard that. I got to listen to that, and I thought that was really good. Yeah. And I will say this: it's a lot easier for me to go to the Dominican Republic and share my faith than it is to share my faith right here in Lexington.
Yep.
I mean, first of all, I know those kids will probably never see me again, so it's easy for me to be bold in front of them. But, you know, a friend that I've known for 30 years, I sit down with and have a cup of coffee with them. It's really hard to bring up the subject of faith. Yeah. Now, I don't know why that is, but it's the coward in me. But I need to be better at that, and hearing you guys talk about that encouraged me to do that more.
Well, I'm talking to myself.
Yeah.
Talking to myself, because that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
I love you.
I love you too. Thanks for having me.
All right, pal. That's my buddy Keith Madison. He's the best. You'll see him around town, and if you want to know more about him, he's got a prayer chain that goes all across the country. And he has made my day by being here today. I love this man, and we love you. And we hope to see you again on the Doug Flynn Show.